All right, y'all, so welcome back to the channel, man. Before we get to the videos, I need your help to unplug some more people out of the matrix. And you do that by spamming the like button, then putting hashtag unplugged in the comment section. That's it. Let's get to it.
New exclusive photographs, by far the best yet, are in from the Titanic. For most of this century, that huge passenger liner has been a dead ship, resting in an ocean grave that, until these past few days, no one had seen. Now, scientists have even seen the iceberg damage that doomed the Titanic. Terry Drinkwater begins our coverage with the new underwater photographs.
Until this photograph.
So this is the first time people are seeing, this is September 2nd, 1985, by the way. This is the first time I'm guessing they're actually witnessing and getting to see the wreckage, the carnage, the damage, everything that took place at this just tragic event that took place where I think it was over maybe, I forgot how many. I know it was over 1,000 people lost their lives, which is still to this day one of the most devastating events. So this is their first time seeing that, I'm thinking.
For 73 years, what happened when the Titanic hit bottom had been a mystery. Here, her bow, as it looks today. The railing around it, along which millionaires strolled on its maiden voyage, is still intact. But below, there is a giant bulge where the double steel hull, considered impregnable by its designers, buckled and broke when the ship plunged into the total darkness of a deep ocean canyon. From his research ship, 2.5 miles above the liner, the expedition's director, Robert Ballard, described the images historians have waited nearly 3/4 of a century to see.
The bow sort of took all the beatings, and all the damage that was done to the bow was in the under part of the bow, but the iceberg hit it. The length that we're looking at is a good 30 to 50 feet.
The remote-controlled robot sub, with its cameras aboard, then moved from the side of the Titanic up to directly above the ship, and more pictures.
You're looking straight down. You're seeing the very tip of the Titanic's bow, and a little mast that's coming up towards you is the mast where they put a little flag.
The camera then pointed.
Seeing this, I can't help but think about the people that night. You know what I mean? It's like my mind automatically goes or tries to recreate the scene or the situation or whatever took place that night. And I'm just thinking about the people and what they could have been experiencing, thinking, seeing, and just having to come to terms with being in that situation, bro. Whew. It's chilling, isn't it?
To the bridge towards the captain's window, where the fateful order to abandon ship was given. And the boilers, each the size of a 2-car garage, by the side of the wreck. Ballard is now sure what happened when the Titanic hit bottom.
No doubt about the boilers roared through the bow. When the ship went vertical and the boilers broke loose, took out everything in their way.
Because men cannot dive and work long at such depths, the camera subs must be unmanned, and piloting them through the wreck is chancy. Technicians on the surface aboard the research ship nearly lost a sub when it hit a rigging around one of the Titanic's 4 towering smokestacks. It was trying to locate the huge aft section of the liner. And, as Ballard told us tonight, so far, this part of the mission has failed.
We're still searching for the stern. We can't find it. It does appear to be disconnected.
The search for the rest of the Titanic can continue only until week's end, when the research ship leaves for home port, ahead of the North Atlantic winter storms. Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, St. John's, Newfoundland.
The Titanic, grand, powerful, confident, and soon to be 2.5 miles under the sea. But it has floated in the world's imagination for 73 years. The Titanic was the first liner and the last liner anyone ever called unsinkable.
I just could not believe that this magnificent ship, which was the most magnificent ship in this day.
Yeah, I'm never getting on something and they dubbed it unsinkable. It's just like, I don't know, it's kind of like putting a target on you for something to happen. No. Don't even say that about anything.
It could actually sink completely.
Everyone on board wasn't so sure. There were exceptions.
You see, my mother refused to go to bed in that ship because she had this premonition, solely based on the fact that she said that to declare a vessel unsinkable was flying in the face of God.
If the Titanic were around today, it would be doing...
That was a smart woman. That was a smart woman. A lot of us would have had that same type of thought process. I would have been so uneasy on that thing. They said it's unsinkable. No, you're just telling the universe that you want it to be sunk. No, don't do that.
Package tours to the Caribbean. The world that went down that starry night featured a jet set that sailed the seas, gentlemen who dressed for dinner and offered women and children their places in the lifeboats. Imagine.
In a way, it was a premonition of the First World War. It was a sign that an era was coming to an end, and it made people aware of the consequences of excessive confidence.
The Titanic taught a civilization that it's a dangerous world we live in, that there are icebergs lurking in the night. It brought many fears to the surface. But what about the Titanic itself?
With 1,500 souls down there, I would agree we should be left where she is. Look at it, dream about it, but don't touch.
The Titanic was the ship that sailed blithely off into the night and was never seen again until this week. Bob Simon, CBS News, New York.
1,500 souls. So I knew it was over 1,000. Just it was a number that I can recall in my brain that I've heard throughout the years, but 1,500 people. 1,500. You've been on these cruise ships. Have you ever been on Carnival? They can pack these cruise ships out, man. You know what I mean? Between the workers, between the crew, between the people who are actually on board to have a good time. There's a lot of people on these ships, bro. And you see how packed it gets. Imagine that.
American scientists who led the team that found the Titanic today released the cream of the crop of thousands of underwater photographs. Among them, haunting and poignant reminders of life on the great liner as it crossed the ice-cold Atlantic for the first and last time. Terry Drinkwater reports.
The most detailed secrets yet of the doomed luxury liner were revealed in a series of photographs released today in Washington. Robert Ballard, who discovered the Titanic, said he almost lost his robot sub, the Argo, just after it took this picture of the front smokestack, which had collapsed. The sub was heading aft towards the second upright stack.
It scared the dickens out of me when we bounced Argo off that stack. Stack didn't do a thing, a little paint came off.
Sorry, I gotta hear that again.
The dickens out of me when we bounced.
After it took this picture of the front smokestack, which had collapsed. The sub was heading aft towards the second upright stack.
It scared the dickens out of me when we bounced Argo off that stack. Stack didn't do a thing, a little paint came off. We do have some Titanic paint on Argo.
The video camera later focused down onto the bridge from above.
There's the bridge, right here. There's the awning. I'm really getting close. You can see the heaving action. This was very scary as the vehicle comes up and down with the roll of the ship.
In the center here, windows of the luxury smoking salon ripped from the hull, and the crane arm, which held one of the Titanic's lifeboats. There were only a third of the number of lifeboats needed. Some men in life jackets jumped over these railings of the ship to survive only briefly in the freezing Atlantic. The ship is now 2.5 miles down.
Very little marine life, but here's a small fish, maybe 3 feet long, swimming quietly over the bow.
Many in the crew were asleep below in the bow when the ship hit the iceberg. But above in the grand salons, the formal
Didn't even get a chance. Didn't even get a chance. You know, I know we all remember that epic scene of people knowing it's going down and just sitting in their rooms like they just accepted the fact. But for the people that were sleeping, can't lie, being on a cruise ship sometimes, man, I think about it. I have to force myself to go to sleep. Well, you know, I go get a few of those drinks. I don't have to too much force myself to go to sleep, but you can't help but think about it. You know, that's why I don't like the rooms, the interior rooms with no windows or nothing like that. No way. Absolutely no way. I'll just pay enough for a balcony. No, or I won't go.
Galas were still in progress, the most elegant here. The roof apparently imploded when the Titanic hit bottom. Before the ship set sail, this is the way the room looked. And now, scattered on the ocean floor amid chunks of the Titanic's coal, a silver tray from the private dining room used by the millionaires, the Astors and the Guggenheims and the rest. Nearby, bottles and bottles of wine, French Bordeaux and Spanish ports, where they have been for 73 years. These shoes were also on the Titanic that night. They belonged to Louise Pope, who was then 4 and on her way to America with her mother and father. Today, she looked at the photographs and remembered back.
We were in bed already when we struck the iceberg. So, of course, she put the shoes on and wrapped me in a blanket, and up we went. We were the second last rowboat. There was one more after we got on.
Ballard concluded today that many more could have been saved if another ship, the Californian, which was as close as 5 miles away, had come to the rescue.
People needn't have died if they'd only responded to those distress flares. They should have responded, in my mind, gone over there and rescued those people.
Ballard believes the lookout in the Titanic's crow's nest atop this now fallen mast could have seen the Californian on the horizon just before the Titanic and the 1,500 aboard went to the bottom. Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, Washington.
Our current understanding of human history suggests that the ancient Sumerians were the first to use a writing system. The cuneiform script was created around 3500 BC and used around the Near East. But according to some scholars, there was a writing system used in Europe that predates even this ancient writing. The Vinca culture was an important civilization that existed between 5700 and 4500 BC. It was a complex society that existed throughout the Balkans, with the majority of the culture lying in modern-day Serbia and Kosovo. In some ways, it was a descendant of the Lipinski Vir culture that had existed thousands of years earlier, but had many other influences as it was spread over such a wide area. The culture is named after the Belgrade suburb of Vinca, where the first artifacts from this civilization were discovered in 1908. The Vinca occupied the site for roughly 300 years, and left behind a wealth of archaeological evidence, including figurines and the foundations of their homes. Many of the figurines created in the later years of the occupation were inscribed with strange markings that had never been seen before. This was the second time modern scholars had been presented with what's now called the Vinca script, or Vinca symbols. The symbols were first discovered in 1875 at the Romanian site of Tordos. Archaeologists there found pottery marked with symbols. Over the next 140 years, roughly 1,000 artifacts with the Vinca symbols have been located, but figuring out what the markings are has left researchers baffled. Some believe the symbols are ancient letters from a long-forgotten writing system. The little pictograms do somewhat resemble the markings that would eventually become cuneiform in Sumeria. But the significance of the similarities is debated, and it's not commonly believed that cuneiform evolved from the pictograms. The problem with the idea that this is a writing system is just how short most of the inscriptions are. 85% of the inscriptions consist of only a single symbol, and many of the symbols are not repeated. 1/6 of the symbols used are described as comb or brush patterns, and may represent numbers. Most of the symbols are found on pots, which were used in trade around the Vinca culture. Others were found on small tablets or inscribed on figurines, like those located in the Vinca suburb. One story is that the symbols might have been used to represent a god or gods, which would indicate a cuneiform culture throughout the Vinca lands, and one that didn't change much over time. This would be strange. Even the famous Greco-Roman gods changed considerably from place to place, and over time periods. The symbols might also have been simple images of what was stored in a pot or desired during a ritual offering of the figurines. This would make the symbols a sort of proto-writing. It never developed into a full writing system though, as the Vinca civilization declined in around 4500 BC, and the use of the symbols faded around 1,000 years later. The Vinca symbols are very controversial in archaeology, with debates about exact dates as well as what the script was used for still ongoing. It's possible this mystery is one destined to never be solved.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. It still is a possibility, don't get me wrong, who am I? But I just think with all of this technology, ChatGPT and all these brains, they're coming up with these highly intelligent computers and stuff like that, and this AI technology, I think we're nearing a time of where some of this stuff will be figured out by artificial intelligence. I wholeheartedly think that. I think we're closer than we think.
Number 4. For years, the locals living in the Fujian Lake in China told legends of an underwater city that could be seen from the nearby mountains on clear days. It wasn't until 1992 that divers went beneath the water to confirm that something strange and mysterious did exist down there. It's the third deepest freshwater lake in the country, reaching a depth of 155 meters, and is home to many endemic species of fish. For centuries, the lake had an almost mystical quality to it. It's said that 2 emissaries from the Jade Emperor were so entranced by its beauty that they were turned into statues on the side of the lake. It's also said to be home of a winged horse, and there have been many UFO sightings from the area. The story of the lost city beneath the water was just another one of the folklore tales, until 1992 when the truth was revealed. An experienced diver named Gang Wei went down into the water to try to find proof. He discovered a sunken city lying not far beneath the water. It was made out of stone with intricate carvings and artifacts scattered among them. Later research determined that the city was between 2.5 and 2.7 square kilometers in area, which would have made it larger than the capital of the Han Dynasty. It was made up of around 30 buildings which were connected by cobblestone streets, as well as several pyramid-like structures. This was obviously an impressive and important find. Even beyond the size of the underwater city, the fact it was made of stone set it apart from what researchers were expecting to find. For such an advanced city to disappear beneath the water without any apparent mention in the historical record was very strange. There are reports of one city that disappeared in Chinese history. The Yuyuan city had once sat at the northern shore of Fujian Lake, before apparently vanishing without a trace. For a while, researchers believed they might have found the lost city of Yuyuan, but the fact that the buildings were made of stone meant that was unlikely. Yuyuan buildings had been made from clay and wood. Carbon dating of the artifacts found in the city determined that it sank around 1750 years ago. This was long before the last mention of Yuyuan existed on land, suggesting that this isn't the lost city. Another hypothesis was that this was the capital of the ancient Dian Kingdom. However, the Dian Kingdom fell long before the artifacts found at the lost city were created, ruling out that as a possibility as well. For now, the identity of this mysterious city remains unknown, but experts are confident that with enough research and time, the truth may be revealed. Number 3. In 2017...
Anytime you hear Lost City, I automatically think Atlantis. But to hear so many other lost cities is just, man, and it's not hard to believe. Earthquakes cause tsunamis, cause flooding, and a lot of these cities could have very well been lost to that type of situation. So I don't really be like, it's no such thing, it's all folklore. I don't really buy into the whole folklore because we know how these cities could have once gone lost with certain things like that, like tsunamis, flood, stuff like that, water level rising, everything.
Metal detectorists in Switzerland made a strange discovery that experts still haven't been able to understand. The 2 treasure hunters found something completely unique while searching near Lake Biel. They pulled a lump of cracked and worn metal from the ground. Also found at the site were a bladed object and a rib bone. After cleaning up the lump of metal, they realized just how intricate it was. It was a bronze hand, colored green after being exposed to the elements for thousands of years. Around the wrist was a band of gold. The objects were given to authorities the following day, and experts set about searching the location where the treasure had been discovered. There, they found one of the fingers that had become detached from the hand, other bronze artifacts, and the bones of a middle-aged male. At first, there were suspicions that this might have been a hoax. The hand was cast from a pound of bronze and was roughly the same size as a teenager's hand. Nothing like this had ever been found in Europe. The gold band around the wrist of the hand had been glued to the bronze using a vegetable-based glue. Scientists were able to carbon date the adhesive and found that it dated back to between 1400 and 1500 BC, and that places it in the Middle Bronze Age. Archaeologists discovered that the man had been buried on top of a stone structure, which is believed to date back even earlier. It was clear this was a very important person, but who he was remains a mystery. The purpose of the bronze hand is also a mystery. It's the oldest bronze piece representing a piece of the body that's ever been found, and the burial is very unique. It's not believed that the hand was worn by a person, but there is a cavity that would have allowed it to be placed onto something. It may have been part of a statue or a scepter. Neither of these objects have been discovered, though. Cracking the mystery of the man that the hand was buried with may solve this mystery of the purpose of this strange artifact. Number 2.
Never seen that like that.
The medicine wheel in Bighorn National Forest, Wyoming, is one of the most impressive historical mysteries from North America. The main question surrounding the wheel is who created it. The medicine wheel is inaccessible for most of the year, with snow covering the structure, but in the summer months, the Wheel of Stones is visible on Medicine Mountain. The whole wheel has a diameter of roughly 80 feet. In the center is a cairn, a ring-shaped pile of rocks which is about 10 feet in diameter. 28 spokes connect the central cairn to the outer ring, and 6 more cairns lie along the outer edge of the ring. The rocks used in the structure are limestone and come from the surrounding areas. According to the Crow people, the tribe that lived on the land when Europeans arrived, the medicine wheel was already there when they arrived. They arrived at the site in roughly 1600, and the story goes that the leader of the tribe had a vision quest that made him realize that he had found their new home. One story told by a Crow elder named Tom Yellowtail is that of a man named Burnt Face, who was disfigured in an accident when he was young. Out of shame, he separated from the rest of the tribe and stayed in the area where the medicine wheel is today. He fasted, prayed, and built the medicine wheel. Eventually, he was approached by the little people who lived there, who healed his scars and sent him back to his tribe.
It looks so much like a burial ground, though. I just keep getting burial ground vibes.
In the story of Burnt Face, it specified that the door to the building he was creating looked towards the sun. The medicine wheel actually has many astronomical alignments. 2 of the outer cairns, when lined up with the central cairn, line up with the rising and setting of the sun at the summer solstice. Other alignments of various cairns line up with the dawn risings of 4 of the brightest stars in the sky. This can be used to tell the exact date.
Now, how would they know to do that? How? How? Where did they obtain this information? And how did they know to align with things in interstellar space? See, this is the questions that we need, because they always throw up the theory of aliens, them connected with aliens. And then you want to say, nah, not a chance. But then stuff like this makes you think, okay, how did they know to do this?
8. All 4 are connected to the summer solstice in some way. The dawn rising of Fomalhaut takes place 28 days before the summer solstice. Aldebaran has its dawn rising in 2 days before the solstice. Rigel has its 28 days after the solstice, and Sirius rises 28 days later. The exact date of the medicine wheel is hard to say. Estimates range from 300 to 800 years, while archaeologists have determined that the time period when the alignments were closest to being perfect was around 1200. The area of Medicine Mountain has also been an important place for Native Americans for thousands of years. Interestingly, it's also one of only 10 places on Earth called the nuclei of continents, a small patch of some of the oldest rocks on the planet. Who originally built the site may remain a mystery, but today it's an important site for many Native American groups who still practice various traditions and ceremonies in this important spiritual location. Number 1.
Yeah, I get spiritual vibes from it too. But like I said, I also get burial ground. I don't know. Just looking back at it and just thinking about it. But I'm still mind blown about how they know to line it up with certain things, or what could have truly it signaled or its significance to them back then. You know what I mean? Them knowing maybe they used it kind of like a way to tell different times of the year, or times of the day, or times of the month, or something like that. Maybe they used it for stuff like that. We've seen things like that in the past. But spiritual, I can see. Burial, yes. And we know it lines up with things in space. Interesting.
In this important spiritual location. Number 1. Some of the strangest historical mysteries are the locations of the final resting places of famous rulers that have been lost to history.
True.
While Egypt's Cleopatra and Macedonia's Alexander the Great are the most famous of these mysteries, Japan has its own mysterious figure with an unknown final resting place. Queen Himiko of Japan is a very mysterious figure. The oldest texts on Japanese history don't mention the ancient queen, but it's important to note that they were being written by people employed by the emperor, and Queen Himiko doesn't quite fit into the legendary story of the early days of the Yamato dynasty. The queen ruled between 180 and 248, a time period mostly covered by legendary stories in Japanese history. Everything we know about her comes from Chinese writing. According to Chinese records, Queen Himiko came to power after decades of war in the land of Wa, the name that they gave to Japan. Japan was split into many states at the time, but the one ruled by Himiko, Yamatai, became the most powerful under her rule. She sent envoys and tributes to the Chinese emperor, and was given the title Ruler of Wa, Friend of Wei. In 247, she sent a request for support from the Wei, as there was a conflict with another state. The outcome of the conflict isn't known, but it's believed Queen Himiko passed away either that year or the year after. The queen was said to have mystical powers, and was likely an important religious figure at the time. There is debate over how much of the ruling she actually did, and how much fell to her brother, but the Chinese believed that she, rather than her brother, wielded great power. After the passing of Himiko, the land fell into another warring states period, and eventually the Yamato dynasty came to power. It's not known if the early Yamato emperors were related to Himiko. According to tradition, the Japanese emperors all descend from the sun goddess, and only one family has ruled since 660 BC. Of course, the first 100 years of that rule, including the time when Himiko would have been in power, are legendary, and it's likely that many states did exist across Japan at that time. It's possible that Himiko ruled in one area and Yamato emperors ruled in another. Interestingly, around the same time that Himiko was said to be in power, the legendary Yamato ruler is said to be Empress Jinju, the wife of the previous emperor who ruled as regent for her son until he was old enough to rule. It's possible Himiko and Jinju were the same person, but there are noticeable differences between the two women, and scholars believe that they were separate people. Where the land of Yamatai is remains a mystery, although there are a few possible areas suggested by archaeologists. Unsurprisingly, the tomb of Queen Himiko is also missing. In 2009, archaeologists believe they had located the tomb in the town of Sakurai. Carbon dating dates the tomb to around the time Himiko passed away. Unfortunately, further study is prohibited by the royal family of Japan, so whether this is Himiko's tomb remains a mystery.
Oh no.
Thank you guys so much for watching.
Man, y'all spam the like button if you love this stuff. God, I love this stuff.